So here we go, beginning our lap of the Nürburgring Nordschleife. Got 150 corners coming up, and we're doing it all on board the VRRoom Racing BMW 235 Cup car. Heading down towards the GP start-finish line and down into turn 1. Downhill braking point as well, so we've got to be careful. We're going to use the ABS on the way in, turning in relatively early and clipping the curb on the inside. Back on power as we're doing so. Bringing it over to the right, but not too far. It's a long and lazy late apex for the loop here, watching as the car gets light over the crest. As we're braking now and turning in, we're going to hug the inside curb and prioritise our exit out of the arena. So we're going to carry the speed through the right and using some of that exit runoff on the left. Rather than turn left for the GP layout, we're actually going to take a right for the Endurance Cup layout. So I'm going to brake late, trail the brake in and come in early downhill. The car's going to be a bit lazy through there, so it's just got to be nice and smooth with my steering. Bring it over to the right, use the camber and the AstroTurf on the inside to help rotate the car. Bring it over to the left, and now this corner is really important because we've got the straight coming up. Get on power as soon as you can, no hesitation, use the exit curve. Now we've got the straight up to the chicane. It's amazing in real life how uphill this actually is, which really does emphasise the importance of carrying the speed. In between the 100 and the 50 marker, we're going to have a little brake, down a couple of gears, and flick it in for the left. Use that inside and flat out through the right. Bring it over to the middle of the track now to open up the last uphill curve onto the Nordschleife. The downhill left, which is officially the start of the Nordschleife. This is where we get our money's worth, tight and twisty. We're now going to come to Hatzenbach, a very tricky right-hander. We're going to try and commit a lot of speed in and use a bit of that camber. Stay left, watch out for the bumps. Bring it over to the right for the second part of Hatzenbach, braking before we turn into that left and then carrying the brake through the right, watching out for that exit point there. Flat through the left curve, a little brake, use a bit of the curb on the right, and then try to get back on power through the left, use a bit of the exit curve. Bring it back to the left, and now we've got to get this exit critical because we've got a straight taking us up the hill to Flugplatz. Using a bit of curb there, car's complaining a little bit under demand for throttle, and we're going to get the run away down the straight. Delta's looking good as we head up the hill now to Flugplatz. Very intimidating corner as we rise over this crest, greeted by a sea of barriers. Pick your reference point out, carry the speed in, be brave, commit the speed in, and you'll be rewarded with lap time. And now we've got a short straight as we head up to a very tricky section coming up. I'm getting really good feedback from the VRRoom sim here. It's giving me great feedback through the torque steering and the Moser system that they're using. We're heading up to Nürburgring now, a tricky corner over a crest. The car's going to complain so much as we go over this crest, making sure that we're not on power too early or too late. Braking now downhill as we head towards Foxhole. This next section coming up is super tricky, super intimidating. The corners are going to bounce at you on the left and right. We're just going to keep our foot flat in it as we head down the hill. Averaging about 150 mile an hour and not even thinking about touching that brake pedal. Our turning in point at the bottom for the compression now is really important because we're going to head over this crest blind. Flick it in, get on that curb, and now it's going to get really tight and technical. We're trying to squeeze as much power out as we can through here and making sure that we prioritise the exit through this section. Nice and tidy through the exit, back on power, use a bit of that curb on the exit just to push me back onto the track. Don't want to use too much because some of the curbs around here are really high. Short straight coming up before we get to Metzgersfeld, a really tricky little left-hander that we want to carry the speed into. Use a bit of the camber on the inside, drop down a gear for the par here on the left using the camber. Don't be too wide on exit to open up the right as we head into Kellenhard. Tight, tricky downhill section here, very easy to catch a brake on the way in. Get on power. Of course, there's a little section coming up Piff Path. Flat left, use the camber on the inside, but watch out for the bump on the right. And then we come into miss, hit, miss. Miss the first apex, hit the second apex, miss the third apex. As we brake now downhill, a really tricky and tight section into here. We've got to make sure we're nice and smooth with our inputs. Get on power as soon as we can, as we're now heading down to the lowest point of the Nordschleife. It's a small bridge over the local village, and there's a big turnout here on race weekends. Locals love their motorsport around here, but you don't want to be the one that gives them the highlights from their front newspaper the next morning for the wrong reasons. Braking up a very steep hill here, dropping down to 30 to make sure we're getting the right rev range. We're now coming up to Bergwerk, really critical corner this coming up. The exit is going to put us onto one of the longest straights on the circuit, and the speed that we carry through here is critical. You've got to have a late turn in and get straight to power, no hesitation. Any hesitation you have there is going to cost you all the way down this straight now. Line of least resistance coming up as we're going to complete what I would call the first sector of the Nordschleife. As we exit Bergwerk now's a good chance for us to check our mirrors and make sure that we're spatially aware of what's going on around us. Because some of the closing speeds from those GT3 cars is immense during an LS round. Some of these corners that we're travelling through, we might be doing 100 mile an hour, they'll be doing 150, 160. But the closing speeds are phenomenal. Got a little left kink here, watching out to carry the speed in. There's Armco barriers on the exit which can really put you off, so pick your reference point out and get back on power. Into a right kink, and we're now arriving at arguably one of the most historic corners in the whole world. Braking, down a couple of gears, get on power, and then we're greeted by the sight of Carousel. We're aiming for the original paving slabs on the way in, and what we're going to do is essentially flick the car at it and use that camber just to settle the car back in, modulating the throttle and getting to full power as soon as we can. We're probably going to be up on 3 tyres as we come out of there, if not 2, just from where the camber drops away. And now we've got a flat out left kink coming up into a bumpy left-right chicane. And that takes us to the highest point on the whole Nordschleife as we head up. Through the first one, watch for the oversteer on the second one, and braking. We're now at the highest point on the circuit. The corners are going to come at us thick and fast now, and I'm going to do my best to try and talk us through them. Flat out through the right, and the moment that wheel is straight, a little brake. Middle of the track on exit, single steering radius. Flick the car in for the right, use the curb. Back on power, end of the curb on the left, it's a little brake, wait for the bump, get back on power. You're blind over the crest, you're not going to see where you're heading. Heading downhill, it's a little brake, try not to snatch a rear brake at the same time. A little bit of oversteer complaint there. And then down into YouTube corner. It's called YouTube corner because if it goes wrong, you'll be all over YouTube the next morning. Braking out up a clumsy right-hander, a little bit of camber to a little bit of off-camber on the exit. We're now going to have a little brake and try not to carry too much speed in. We don't want to use that heavy curb on the outside. Over the crest, keep it middle of the track on the way down. Middle of the track on the way through, straight line through these two. Now we've got a big old jump coming up. Brake just before, brake just after. Car's going to be super light through the double apex. Keep it flat out through this crest, it's completely blind. Now we've got a massive downhill here. Make sure your wheel is as straight as you can because those front tyres are going to lighten up. Through the right kink, it's not quite flat out. It tempts you to do it, but don't try it. These corners are going to bounce off the side of your car, don't worry about them. We've now got a little braking point here. It's a long and lazy right-hander. Don't be dragged in too early. Open it up, get in for the left kink. We've now got mini-Carousel coming up. We're going to drop down a gear and get tucked up into it, and it's going to flick us out on the exit. Back on power, over to the left, and now we're braking uphill, into the right, carry the speed through, flat out through this right, and we're now greeted by the Döttinger Höhe, a massive long straight, the longest one on the whole circuit. You can see straight over the horizon here, and you'll also see the fuel counter falling down as well at the same time. Once again, it's another good chance for us to check our mirrors, check what's going on around us, get on the radio to the team, ask what the situation is. We're now heading up towards the Bilstein Bridge. So we've got a couple of corners left, we just need to make sure we nail to complete our lap here. Very easy to lose all your time through these because they're high speed into slow speed. As we turn into the Bilstein Bridge, line of least resistance, it's a slight turn in. Now we've got a tricky, bumpy, flat out left. As we commit in, make sure the wheel's straight, it's a little brake, settle the car in for the right, now braking hard. Get close to that arm car on the left to open up the right. Turning in, maybe use a little bit of curve on the inside, get straight back to power for the left, and full throttle, and that is a lap of the Nürburgring Nordschleife Endurance Cup layout.